It's a Track Stitch podcast brought to you by Para Rubber Pools. Coming up, drama in the soap opera that is American middle distance track running. And we go back to 1983. The New York City Marathon is this weekend, and we reflect on one of the great performances from kind of an underrated New Zealand superstar athlete of the time. All that and more coming up. But first on the People's Podcast, it's the People's Band with the People's Saxophone. Track Stitch, go.
Champion, Rohde is bearing down on top of Ngugi. Ngugi digs deep and he's got no more. And Andrew Lloyd wins it up.
Récupéré ensuite chez lui au Maroc à Ifrane.
À la Web, il est parti à la Web, il a tenté le coup du siècle là.
Oui,
surprendre tout le monde. Au 800.
Final of the men's 10,000 meters in 19.
Not the ball out. Oh, it looks to be. Who else is in the race? The wave is there. The confidence is there.
Recording the podcast Saturday, November the 1st here in the United States of America, one day after Halloween, 2 days after Halloween for Shane Rohde, sitting in the Track Stitch corporate headquarters in Auckland, New Zealand. Rohde, what's going on, mate?
Well, luckily, we've got a bit of revenue from the law firm, because I don't think the Track Stitch podcast, as of yet, will be covering expenses.
We did get a comment, though, on our last video. Did you see that?
We?
Yeah, we did. Yeah, I mean, it may or may not have been my neighbour Rich, but whatever. You know, you got to start somewhere.
You do.
Yeah, things are a bit quiet in the world of track and field, but there's always something going on. There's always something we can find to talk about. And one of the big things that's happening right now is this rather dramatic situation involving Justin Rinaldi, Fast 8 Track Club over there in Melbourne, and Josh Hoey. Seems there's been a bit of a, I'd say, somewhat acrimonious split between the two. Who really knows? I've got a little bit of a backstory to this one, but I'll let you go first. What was your first take when you heard about this?
I mean, the lazy or the obvious first take from anyone that follows the sport is it's sheer madness. But you know, like you said, we chatted a little bit yesterday, and you said you'd save it for the podcast. I don't have any inside information as such, so it's hard to prejudge. But on the face of it, it seems wild that they would split. But
yeah,
hey, like it's America, right? Like what was his name? Frank Vogel, Lakers, 2020. You know, and they were still amazing the year after that. They fired him.
Yeah. No, I mean, so I'll be honest. I found out about this a little bit before the story was broken by the boys over in Let's Run. Justin had mentioned to me, and I sort of kept quiet on it because I, wanted either him to sort of break the news or it to go down. He ended up contacting the guys, and the story was released. So I mean, we had the opportunity, Shane. We could have been the world first to.
But then we would have lost our journalistic integrity.
That's correct.
Never disclose a source.
That's right. But yeah, no. Justin had reached out and told me about this, and I was kind of stunned. He said something maybe a couple of months ago, just about seeing how things were going to play out, which I thought was kind of crazy at the time, because I was like, man, why would this not be a happy situation or a well-functioning situation for that whole setup? Obviously Josh Hoey has made massive strides this season in particular, going from kind of like a middle of the pack US runner to world indoor champion. He led the United States, or the US leader, over 800 and 1500 last year. That hadn't been, this season, that hadn't been done since Alan Webb way back in 2007. And we'd mentioned it before too. You corrected me, you got it right first time around. He's one of only 5 men in history to run under 143 and 330. But here's another one for you. He's one of only 2 guys in history to run under 142.50 and 330, and the other one is Seb Coe. So obviously got to a really good level. When Justin had mentioned this the very, very first time around, I thought it was kind of crazy. And then he'd said to me again that they'd actually made the official split and gave me a few details of it. I guess I was kind of stunned, but as he sort of explained it more, I began to sort of understand like why he would do it. And I think it was just a really difficult situation of, and I'll give Justin a lot of props here because it could have been really easy just to stick around for a number of other reasons, financial being one of them as well. I think it's well known that the Hoey family is not short on a dollar for in terms of expenses, around all their sons' athletic careers. But so, big props to Justin for actually making the move because it couldn't have been easy to do that. But yeah, I mean, I think there's beyond just what we see on the surface, there's kind of like some undertones here just around, I guess, family involvement in sports and maybe how if it's not sort of harnessed correctly or there's maybe just not quite the lack of awareness, how it can actually be quite toxic in a situation.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, first thing I'd point out that's extraordinary that someone like Josh Hoey comes from that level of material wealth is actually as tough, as good as he is, because a lot of offspring of very, very wealthy people, and it sounds like they are very wealthy people, there's no fight because it's often that fight is a creature of circumstance. So the fact he is as tough, and as the stuff I was reading on Let's Run, that Rinaldi's own words, he's never seen someone tougher and more determined. It is, in and of itself, an incredible thing. And it sounds like for the most part, he said he spoke to Pete Bowles' dad, parents like once in 10 years, but sounds like he was talking to him every day and to Fran Hoey, and I've, just with my law firm, I've got a lot of experience dealing with wealthy people, and there's a misconception that they're either all awful or they're controlling or whatever. Fran Hoey may have been a lovely guy and he just happens to have a lot of money. And when sometimes people make a lot of money, their time and their energy frees up and what they want to do frees up. And oftentimes they will put that into their children because they love them. And so it's from a place of love and without knowing the specifics, love and interest and passion. And then he's probably got along for the ride. He's got on that roller coaster. He's like, wow, this is a buzz. Imagine watching for you or me if we had a son or a daughter and they become a world-class runner. That's a cool buzz. But the problem is that Josh is a product of this all-encompassing environment where it really, whether it's explicit like Fran going do better or just the pressure that you feel, I've had all this money poured into me, I've got all this time poured into me. Imagine bombing in those world champs.
Right.
And that's where it's like, that's where you see it's tough because it's like, it's very binary or polarized in the sense of if I'm not, say, world champ or, world record holder, or if I'm not going to achieve that and I want it now, then I'm a failure and everything else is, sort of not good enough. And for reasons you and I will get to as this podcast evolves or develops, I don't think that's a very healthy attitude. And it often is a product from that strong familial money, around you type of situation.
And it doesn't help that also, the father in this instance, Fran, former runner himself, his wife, obviously Josh's mother is a runner, was a former runner, all the kids are runners, the whole family are just runners, right? So it's obviously a family of high passion and et cetera, et cetera. And, I remember sort of back to, I'm not sure how you were. I think we're probably pretty similar in this respect. When you were running, I kind of really wanted to keep my parents separate from it. Now, we weren't in the same situation at all. Like, it's just extremely middle class family. I mean, there wasn't a synthetic track built for me to, further my career. I was allowed to run on the backyard every now and then. But, I just, for some reason, I just felt it was, I don't even know, it wasn't even like a conscious decision, but I always felt like I wanted to keep my parents sort of separate out of my athletic life. And honestly, maybe even I was a little bit too extreme in keeping them out because I just really wanted it to be my thing. My parents weren't overbearing at all. Like I know your parents too. I doubt they were interested in pushing you super hard and track, but I feel like that just sort of worked out in a good way. I think just as a general rule, these kind of like heavy parental involvement in their kids' careers, particularly in sport, every now and then they work out, but I think that's the exception, not the rule, right? Like more often than not, they sort of end with weird dynamics that don't really benefit the kids or the athlete. I mean, I think you nailed it on the head here. Whether or not, Fran Hoey is saying to Josh, hey, Justin set you this workout of, what was it? 3/400s in 48, right? But Josh, you should try and run 48, 47, 46, like as was reported. It doesn't have to be explicitly said, but it's just the fact that, like you said, this dynamic of, the heavily involved dad. I always want to prove to my dad that I'm worthy, that, his investment or the investment in me is there. And it just creates these dynamics. I think as a parent, and I'm saying this as not a parent myself, you've just got to be really careful to monitor and make sure that it's not there.
Yeah, I mean, with the whole parental thing, I think it's worse in sports which rely on a bioenergetic engine, like say running is the prime example, as opposed to these skill-based sports like your Tiger Woods and Serena Williams. If they have a pushy parent, it's the nature of the activity. You can do that ad nauseum from a very young age, and if you can mentally not burn out, the chances of, that's why almost all of these tennis players, and well, in fact, all of them, golf, it's that prodigal, like the whole 10,000 hour rule. They've just done so much of it. When you've got it in say athletics, and that engine is your prize asset, there's a high likelihood that push, whether it's explicit or just inferred, will burn the athlete out. It's very likely.
Yeah, we said texting yesterday, it's almost like your body's like a car engine, right? It's at some point there's only a certain amount of stress you can put it under. It can be functioning fine for its entire lifespan, but then just at some point it's going to, the old adage that they use, like in basketballs, you've only got, I mentioned this on the podcast a couple of weeks ago too, so you've only got so many jumps in your body before the body's just like, I can't do it anymore. So it's what you have to be really careful of in this instance, and I think just getting back to sort of Justin's involvement in this, I think there's a big sentiment out there that, and I would just set this, not that I need to set the record straight for him, but I think there's also this kind of narrative out there that he was, let go by the Hoey family, right, for kind of not playing ball and them wanting to do things a certain way and him disagreeing. That's not the case at all. I think if anything, this came from his side, where he was like smart enough and had like the sense and the sort of the intuition to say, if we're not seeing eye to eye on the training, right? Like, I don't want to be constantly fighting to hold this guy back, or I don't want to be putting forward training plans and training sessions, and then the feedback is always coming in like, yeah, but what if we just did this, or how can we modify it this way? Because he's a real, Justin's a very smart guy, and he's like an artist in this respect of putting together these training plans for athletes. And he does it on an individual basis too. Like, I know that he's got a big group in that Fast 8 track club, and almost none of the workout schedules, et cetera, are the same for all the athletes. So he puts a lot of effort in. I think it was just from his side, when he could see how this was trending, he just realized that it wasn't going to work. So I think that's a really important distinction to make, that he wasn't, kicked to the curb here. It was more from his side, and then it was sort of like a somewhat mutual like agreement that they would part ways. But again, just getting back to this, the underlying thing here, and this is what you had mentioned when you first read about it, you couldn't believe what you were reading. You're not the only person that I know loves the sport and couldn't believe what they were reading. Like,
You just broke up a little bit there.
oh, sorry. No, I was just saying that you're not the only person who said that they couldn't believe what they were reading when they heard about this. It just seems crazy that you wouldn't really work hard, that you couldn't bend to try and figure this out, given how well he's progressed, particularly this year under Justin's tutelage or guidance.
to be really great at something, you need to have an intellect and a maturity that, given most star athletes are very young, that belie your years. I remember that Senna documentary interviewing what was his name, Ron Dennis, and he was saying, or Rod, is it Rod? The guy who ran the team, and he was asked, he was describing Prost and Senna, and he's saying they're both obviously very fast, but above all else, they had this intellect, and that doco really got behind how intelligent those guys were. And like, I remember having a lot to do with you when you were, an Olympic athlete with Nick Willis, our mate. Like, there's a real intellect there, beyond, and it was something that, and it's intellect fused with maturity, because I like to think I had the intellect as a younger athlete, and I was nothing like you guys, but I didn't have the maturity. So my poor old coach, or a couple of coaches aside, I just didn't believe in myself as well. And I suspect that's a little bit of what's going on here with Josh Hoey. And I wouldn't actually allow people to coach, because I was always like looking into things, and I would have been a pain in the ass. These guys, and I remember like reading about Lance Armstrong being asked if he would ever coach or manage, and he laughed and he goes, "No, I had Michele Ferrari and Johan Brunel did that stuff for me." So he was smart enough. You're either going to be kind of dumb, like I think Tom Mayo told me once that Eamon Coughlin said, you need to be, the guy that coached Coughlin, the Irish guy, is it Ray Tracy?
Yes.
Said you need to either be like a big dumb horse and just go out there and be told what to do, or you need to be so smart that you know to like dumb yourself down and just listen. And I was never capable of that as a younger man. And I suspect Hoey, it's a combination of not believing in yourself that your talent alone is enough. The whole parental, the feeling of pressure, and just that, like you said, desire to get under the bonnet and tinker with everything in a way that, renders Justin not even really a coach. And I, like you said, I think it's a cool principled approach for him to go, well, this isn't actually me coaching. And like you said, he could do the thing where he kind of gets to vicariously put his name to this guy. And if he does well, he becomes more like an advisor type. And he was like, well, no, that's not why I'm in this. And like you said, it would probably cost him. I read something that it was a lot of his actual income was from his Hoey family. And he's like, well, no, I'm not even doing what I believe to be the case. And I don't want to, continue to be involved on this kind of re-engineered basis.
I mean, I completely I'd say that I relate somewhat to Josh Hoey in that situation too, because I was definitely, you mentioning about how you have to be so smart just to dumbing yourself down, or the complete opposite. I was definitely far too much in the middle myself, right? Like it's not like I ever had any situations like this, but then again, I was never good enough to be at this level. But I would always like to think of myself as somebody that could coach myself. In fact, a lot of the workouts that I did with my coach after Julian Jones, and you remember Julian, but after him with my German coach, Harold, right? A lot of the workouts that we would sort of come to an agreement ourselves, and I was always tinkering and trying to change things and do things. And to be honest, now looking back, I realized that like I just shouldn't have done that. Right. And I look back at like all these mistakes that I made. And this is where I think like Nick, you mentioned Nick Willis, right? Obviously Nick and I were quite comparable as junior athletes, but then as a senior, Nick really took off and became, one of the great middle distance runners, not just for New Zealand, but when you look in the context of the sport and who he had to run against in history, actually. But Nick really got over that hump where he just realized that he had to kind of let go, and that, a bad training performance, if he felt bad in training, it didn't need to be backed up with, these confidence building little sessions of, hey, we're going to do an easy run, but we're also then going to do a few strides just to make sure I can still. And I was definitely an athlete like that, right? Like I found it very difficult to handle having a bad training workout. And the way that I would look at it is not saying, hey, my body maybe needs a little bit of extra time here to recover. It was always the opposite way around. It was like, no, man, I need to come back in 2 days' time and prove to myself that I'm still, in shape. And I realize looking back now in my quote unquote old age, or more experience, through a more experienced lens, just what how damaging that was and how stupid that was for me to do that. It's funny the experience that you garner, but ultimately what it comes out of is exactly what you said. It's lack of confidence. And I know that there was always, I mean, maybe within New Zealand circles, there was this perception that I was like an extremely confident athlete, but that was the complete opposite. It was, and I know you and I have spoken about this like post-career and just talking shit about this, our careers and the good old days. It's born out of the opposite. So yeah,
Well,
it's a tough situation.
I was a lot better at understanding these things than I was at running around a track, but I could actually tell that with you. I remember that 99 final that I was in Wellington, how you didn't go for that record when you'd run 149 the week before, because Kurt Williams, I think on paper, was about 3 or 4 seconds slower than you, and you didn't want to lose. And I get wanting to not blow up and not do the perfect 5 years. I get all that. But looking back now, you'd look at it and go, he wasn't going to freaking beat me, and I want to break the record. But hey, anyway, that's 25 years of
I know
hindsight. Just on another point on,
No, go on. I was just going to say that this sort of, it just keeps my mind spinning about like sort of the ways that athletes can be supported just beyond like the family, the agent, the coach. I just wonder if there's even this little gray area within athletes like lives at a professional level of just, it's almost like, I wouldn't say like it's a career advisor, but it seems like there's almost, don't you agree? There's this little spot for somebody to come into an athlete's life and be like, hey man, listen, what you're doing here, you need to not do because of this. And I'm coming from a place of not being a parent or not being a coach. And I'm coming from a place where I completely understand what you're going through. And this is why it can be so damaging. Here's why, just doing this extra set of 10 100-meter strides that you believe are very low energy cost is actually quite detrimental to your performance. I mean, like that really came through because I was reading about his Hoey's like build into the US champs this year, basically running like unscheduled workouts as a kind of a way to like tack on extra fitness within 10 days of a competition, which is absurd, right? There's no way that you're going to gain any kind of fitness 10 days before a race. Like you can only excuse my language here, fuck it up. So, but it's difficult when, you're always trying to improve yourself and you're maniacal and wanting to be better, to catch yourself.
Yeah. I think reading that article on Let's Run about those workouts, like the 3x400 when he was trying to like run a descending pace, and like I think I've got even more mad respect for how talented and tough the guy is, because he's doing all that on top of what we could see in terms of his schedule, in terms of racing for that long, that intensely, and he's doing all that stuff as well. And the fact he held it together the way he did for that long with all that intensity, and he's obviously pushing, I'm sure he's pushing past what Justin was giving him as well.
Right.
Like pretty incredible. Just on that whole point though about like the athlete advisor, I think, and got Tom Mayo twice in one podcast, but he told me once that Brendan Foster said, there's quite a good quote, was you finally figure it all out as an athlete and then the next day you retire.
Yeah.
And it's kind of true. But I don't know if people like, I wouldn't have been able to be told when I was younger. You wouldn't have. And
no.
I think it's kind of, you just become a product of your environment. My partner and I were watching a NBA game yesterday or a few days ago, and I was explaining to her DeAndre Ayton and his kind of journey, and I went back and we watched some clips of him in 2018, and you can just see how kind of languid and gormless and disinterested he looks now. And Rose was saying, well, will he now not have a good career? I said, no, he'll have a great career. He'll make 100 and something times more than we'll ever make in our life, and he'll just meander. And she goes, well, how can he stay in this? Because he's kind of in there. So his sort of goalpost or his game, really speaking, is he was what was he, number one pick? He now plays for the Lakers. I'm sure that guy's got a very good life, and he's just doing enough to keep an NBA contract to give himself a good life, and that's his life. Yeah. And when we look at the Hoeys or we look at other athletes, it's like, who are you or I, or for that matter, anyone else to say, well, that's how you should be, and that's your because also the same things that have even made him a world-class athlete, they've come out of this mix of people and circumstances as well. So we can go, oh, you should do this way. Because the reality is, for Josh Hoey, is that if he had anyone with any degree of sensibility or intelligence remotely close to him that could tell him the truth, they'd say, you are completely insane. You're a 147 guy for years and years and years. Like, you could go and find this. My old coach told me this. It's, and everything I can see is true, that having either one coach or maybe a childhood coach, then a senior coach, there's some correlation between that and, say, amount of Olympic champions, world record holders. Almost all of them have had very minimal coaching changes. So already he's behind the 8 ball on that. He finds a guy that makes him, let's be honest, a world beater. He won a Diamond League, he ran 142.01. Before 2 or 3 years ago, that would have been like, I know it's gone a bit crazy, but that shows, and I think he could go quicker. I think you agree with that. Yeah. So he all of a sudden was, so you've got to zoom out and look at the reality of the situation, not in a 6 or 12 month window, but a 5-year window. And he's obviously got the talent. He can do the intensity. So now it's just patience and letting go. And he's not going to do that. So his career, if he goes the way he's going, unless someone literally grabs him by the bloody neck and says, stop doing this, he's just going to, the career will sort of meander into kind of, a flash in the pan, that great talented guy that came along, and he'll just disappear. And that's what's going to happen because that's his environment.
Yeah, it's going to be a super interesting. I mean, where are we now? November. So November, December, January. It's going to be a really interesting 5-month period here to see if he comes out. I mean, we'd mentioned earlier on previous podcasts, like historical workload in terms of like racing, sort of right up there with the, these big old school seasons that I think a couple of guys that we mentioned, Wilfred Bungay and Andre Bucher, who were just like absolute track warriors who ran 25, 26, 800 meter races in a season. Josh is different because he's running the 1500 as well. And then you throw in the fact that he's just training like an absolute maniac. It's going to be really interesting. And Justin, I know Justin's whole point of view was, a 3-year plan or a 3 or 4 year plan to get through to being the Olympic champion in LA, which would seem like I don't know. Hey, put it this way: it's as good he's got as good a shot maybe as anybody in the US. I mean, he definitely is tough and talented and has proven he can win. But as Justin said, the guys just wanted to do all of that in 6 months, and I don't know what exactly that's a function of. But either way, should we move on? I mean, it's been good luck to him. That's all I say. And it's going to be really interesting thing. And also for all the athletes that are listening to us, please feel free to give Justin Rinaldi a shout because he is a fantastic coach and a very, very smart guy. And I mean, you must have known about Justin or just even the name, like in following.
Watch him in the early games and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
absolutely.
I mean,
and he's been on the Let's Run message board for years and years, and I've always really liked his comments.
I actually hadn't known Justin very well until like the beginning of this year, but like for him and I, when we first met and were just talking, it was like cut from the same cloth of just like nerdiness and passion for the sport and all this kind of stuff. So him and I get on really well, and I know Justin is a fantastic coach. Looking for sponsors too. So for all the big brands that are listening to us today, please reach out to Justin. He's a great guy. Deo, this Sunday, New York City, one of your favorite cities in the world. Correct? You love it.
It is.
Yeah. You love the subway there, especially. New York City Marathon's happening this Sunday. We talked about it, I think, last week with Bekele running, like the little bit of the subplot with him and Kipchoge. Do you know that Kipchoge is only 40 years old and Bekele's 43? Like, allegedly,
I don't believe either of those ages. I reckon they're both like mid-50s.
I mean, especially, no disrespect to Kipchoge, but I was looking it up because I wanted to see like where they were in their respective careers. I looked up Bekele's age first, 43, and that made sense to me. I'm like, yeah, it's about the same age as us. And then I looked up Kipchoge, and he's supposed to be 3-4 years younger than us. That's ridiculous, isn't it? Anyway, that's kind of an interesting little one there. I mean, I don't know if neither of them are going to win the race. I don't believe. I mean, it would be an absolute miracle if they did. But kind of just an interesting one there is, I guess, two guys that a lot of people would put on the Mount Rushmore of distance running, going head to head for probably the final time in their careers. Here, I think probably the better question is this: what odds are they that both of them actually finish the marathon? Quite low, right?
Yeah, I'm unenthused by it. It's sort of like it's like a bit like sort of Elvis in his sort of years before his death. Just a shadow. Yeah, they got the name there still, but it's kind of like, the amount of times, I think I said this last week, it's like, Bekele, and then I see them doing a bit of a LeBron James with, there's a big announcement, and they talk to Valentin Trail, and he's like, but he's not retiring. It's just like,
yeah,
we've sort of had I've sort of had enough of him. Like he's won all these races and he's incredible, but it's like, can't you go and do something else?
Do you remember when we used to get remember when professional boxing used to come on the telly in New Zealand, like HBO special, and it was like George Foreman boxing against Riddick Big Daddy Bo, and you remember how that was always like hyped up, and then they would come out to the ring and like George Foreman's like 56 years old and Riddick Bo's been just drinking,
threw 3 punches.
Yeah, he's been
standing there
Budweiser for 4 years, and it's all hyped up, and Don King's there hyping it up, and then it just sucks. That kind of, I'm getting a little bit of those vibes, but I am interested to see if they'll actually get there. But the reason why we bring up New York City Marathon, it's a great segue, because we can go back to 1983 when you and I were clearly huge track and field fans. Now, we were just wee nippers back then, but Rod Dixon became the only New Zealand male to not just win the New York City Marathon, but also any major marathon. And he did it 2:08:59. There's like the iconic sort of image of him crossing the line, the dramatic Dixon, hands up in the air, it's pouring down with rain. I mean, what a performance that was, like, and one now that I guess you took it for granted back then, because New Zealand had a lot of good distance runners. It was that era of Quacks and Walker, etc., etc. But I think like the question is, it's like, how good is Rod Dixon? And we've got some viewers, Sammy Maloney, we mention him every week. He'll love us talking about a guy like Dixon. Like, where does Dixon sit in the pantheon of New Zealand distance runners? And he's criminally underrated, right?
Yeah, what did he run? 147, 333.
Yep. Keep going.
All the way up to 2:08:59.
What do you think he ran for the mile? I'm the stats nerd. I've got them here in front of me.
What did Dixon run? Not that fast, because he only ran, 3:37 for 1,500. What did he run for the mile? 3:55, 3:56?
No, faster. 3:53:62.
Oh, shit.
Yep, and 13:17:7. So listen to this. I did the research. I'll spring it on you. When he ran 3:33, that was the 5th all-time performance in history. That was in the that awesome Commonwealth Games 74 final. When he ran 3:53 for the mile, 3:53:62, it was 13th all-time. When he ran 13:17.7, it was the 16th all-time performance.
Yep.
And the 2:08:59 on that New York course, which is not fast, 7th all-time.
Yeah.
Like at the time of running. I mean, here's a good one for the hot take highway. Right, when Dixon ran that performance to win, November 1983, was he at that particular point in time the greatest all-round runner in history? Because under this lens, when you look at his range, because that was always the famous thing, right?
What about Viren?
Yeah, Viren.
Where did Viren get in the marathon in 1980?
Oh, that's a good question. But he didn't have that all the way down to the. I mean,
I didn't have it all.
Go back to guys like Nurmi, Paavo Nurmi, and Zatopek. It was so long ago. Like,
yeah,
I don't know. It was kind of impressive, wasn't it? Because also, he was third in World Cross.
Yeah,
as well.
And he was just a legend. He had that chutzpah, that charisma, and he was, they named that Pan Am airline sponsored him, and they named that jet the Pan Am Clipper Rod Dixon. He had that on it. And he had that sort of buccaneering, swashbuckling, like the big hair and the beard and the little
Tom
chain.
Selleck
And
moustache.
yeah, and he was, I went to a coaching clinic he put on at St. Cuthbert's back in like the late 90s, and he was a cool dude. He was definitely a charming, charismatic guy, and a big star in track and field back then.
Swashbuckling.
Walker and he was a swashbuckling dude. He was cool. Yeah.
No,
Awesome.
I mean, I was just thinking about it when I'm looking at that body of performance, and again, like obviously we know there've been guys who come after him. You wouldn't put him on the greatest all-time runners right now, right? But I mean, he got the Olympic medal in 1972 in the 1500, like which may be one of the most underrated medals ever won by a New Zealand athlete at the Olympic Games, right? That was a huge performance, right? Nobody really remembers that. We only remember Snell and the golds and Walker and Willis, etc. And then, of course, he was fourth in the 5K in that heartbreaking sort of finish where, was it Klaus-Peter Hildebrandt from West Germany, like dove at the finish line, and he technically under today's rules, he wouldn't, it wouldn't have counted because he dove. You've got to be like above waist height, I believe, and he dove like fully prone across the finish line, and they were thinking about protesting.
It's a real shame. I think I've read a few articles from people much more esteemed in the journalism game than I am and well researched, but I read quite a few, and the consensus seemed to be amongst these esteemed writers, critics, was that him and Quacks kind of stuffed that race up a bit.
Oh, totally.
Yeah. They really could have got 1-2 or maybe 1-3. Yeah.
Quacks in particular, I think he was he the world record holder going into that?
He was, I believe so, 13-12.
Yeah, and I think even if you talk to Quacks, like rest his soul. Unfortunately, Dick Quack's not with us anymore. But I think I remember listening to him talking about that, where he like admits as much himself, where he's like, there was kind of a moment in the race where we had a chance to take it to Burin and we knew what we needed to do, but he just didn't quite get it done. But that's an awesome image, eh? Like in that 5K when they're just coming around with 110 to go, flat to the boards, and like Quacks is on the inside. No, Viren's taken the lead by that point. Quacks is coming up on the outside. Dixon's just gnarly behind him in the third place, and then like that heartbreaking finish. But
when an athlete, it's a bit like only the like super popular rock bands survive generations. It's like when an athlete doesn't win, their star fades a lot more, severely than when someone wins. So you've got like Dixon, the fact he's like didn't win like Walker. You've got Quacks, but if you go back under the hood a little bit and look into these guys, so we talked already about Dixon, but like Quacks as well was just such a freaky athlete. Like I think it was in Walker's autobiography, or maybe it was in Kiwis Can Fly, where they ran that 4x1500 world record attempt, and Quacks ran like 3:35.6 solo on his own.
Yes.
And I remember someone just saying to him, "You freaking animal," afterwards. Like, imagine, like, even with the tracks now and the tech, imagine running like 3:35 solo. Like, that's in a relay. It's crazy stuff. Even if like Nick Willis or someone ran out and ran 3:35 solo, you'd be going, "Whoa, that was impressive," you know?
Yeah.
And he actually reminds me quite a bit of Nick. Like, not only the fact they didn't like win an Olympics, but just such like that upright form. And I remember seeing his son run in person a few years back. Like, just awesome athletes. And the fact they didn't actually win in percentage terms shouldn't diminish the esteem that they're held in terms of their place in things, because they're just, both in Nick's case, but also in this case, we're talking about like more the historical era. Quacks was just that awesome sort of bolt upright back and just that beautifully efficient form. Yeah, he was another stud.
It's interesting when you think about it, because if you're thinking the Mount Rushmore of New Zealand, like runners, athletes, and we'll just on the male side, we've had more success on men's track running than on the women's side. All things objectively speaking. You've obviously got Snell there. He's like the first guy on there, and you've got John Walker there too. Do you think that Dixon sneaks onto that list? Like, I mean, it's tough because you're putting him up against a guy like Jack Lovelock, but again, that's so far back. Lovelock only has the history over the one event, 1,500 meters, in a time where just I don't want to be disparaging of that era, but not quite the same level of talent and depth as there was in the 70s and 80s. And then you've got Murray Hellberg, of course, Olympic 5,000 meter champion, but similarly didn't only one event. There has to be, and then you're really getting into this sort of Nick Willis, Dick Quacks, Rod Dixon-y sort of.
Yeah, but the thing you've got, I think,
maybe Beamish now as a world champion, multiple world champion, but Dixon's got to have that case. Just the range and the quality, to win Olympic medal in the 1,500 and win the New York Marathon is quite unprecedented, right?
Yeah. Just thinking though about. No, I was just thinking something a related point about like the eras and who they compete against. I think you've got to personally. I think you've got to look more into like the era and who you talked about Lovelock, etc. But
right,
like Don Bradman in cricket, you talk about averaging 99, then you go and see the guys you're bowling against. It's like he'd be the sort of backup bowler in the BYC, and Don Bradman, the middle
like
lever,
facing us. Or
yeah.
Stu Kerr. It's like
Stu
Kerr in the nets.
It's like, I don't know. And then you've got like Nick Willis, what both guys that beat him in his bronze on the track was both have been caught for drugs, Ramsey at the time, and then Kiprop was exposed later. And so it's like, man, that's tough in that era where the drugs just dominated. And, you'd even saw it in that 2015 final when he was in around 3:29 in Monaco, and that separation. And then all these people in that group have either been caught or heavily implicated in things. And it's kind of like, I don't know. And then you've got Dixon. I think the easier way to look at it is that all those guys are great in their own right, like your Dixons and your Willises and your Beamishes and your Walkers and Snell. And like and obviously Lovelock, they're all different. You don't need to rank them or say they're
on the fence, Shane Roddy. Just toughen up, make a call. Is he on the Rushmore or not? This is what the people want to hear.
Who, Dixon?
Yeah.
Not in the middle distances.
Oh, really?
No.
All right.
No. I
But
don't think so.
Would you put Phil Clode ahead of him?
You're just trying to get me in trouble with Phil Clode again after I said Robbie would beat him in the.
Well, I'm already in trouble with him after you found out that I paid him out at the steeplechase at the Athletic Super Provincials back in '98. So we're both in trouble. Nah,
no,
kidding.
Dixon.
I'm going to put him there. That's fine. We can agree. I love it when we disagree on these points. I'm putting him there because I think just there has to be some.
But wait a minute, is Willis on there?
Whoa.
Yeah, see, I don't think you can put him on and not.
Yeah, but
Olympic silver and bronze in the 1,500 in the 2010s.
But Dixon nearly met. I mean, I know, but he didn't. But also third at World Cross, mate. Third at World Cross, wins a World Marathon major. No.
Just to be clear.
Oh, just for middle distance running.
Yeah, if you're talking like the 1,500.
Oh, okay. Oh, then no. But I think as like a career body of work.
Yeah, absolutely. Like as an athlete, of course he is. He's one of the first guys you'd have on there.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, anyway, over 40 years ago. Goodness me, that is crazy. We were fresh wee nippers at that point, only 2 years old when Dix was crossing the line, raising hand in glory on Fifth Avenue or wherever they have. Oh no, Central Park, of course. What am I talking about? Or maybe they didn't have the finish in Central Park that year. I think it may have been on one of those major avenues in Midtown back in the 80s. But anyway, right. Hey, so. Shane, you and I, we're not just track and field fans, right? We're sports lovers in general. We've got a bit of time here, and I know you've definitely gotten to your US sports over the last couple of years. We've got a big US following here, so we're not really going to talk too much about cricket, and there's really no cricket that happens in New Zealand these days anyway. No. The All Blacks are playing, by the way, the All Blacks are playing Ireland at Soldier Field in Chicago in about 45 minutes. They're kicking off. That's kind of interesting. I might watch that. But you've been getting into US sports over the last couple of years. Do you think you had a few topics that you wanted to, or do you have a few topics that you want to discuss? I've got some
You
stuff
remind me.
going on. We could
We were
talk
texting about
about.
it yesterday, but can you josh my memory about what I said? I can't remember.
Oh no, I think you had a point about Luka and how his trading from the Mavericks has actually basically saved his career, and then that connected into this whole LeBron James kind of, wouldn't say it's a conspiracy, but really interesting take. And then, like, as well, from my side, you've just got like this almost meltdown happening as YouTube TV has gotten to this dispute with Disney, which has seen like all ESPN and ABC stuff pulled from this streaming platform, and so many people have got, you actually pay for these streaming platforms to watch sports, and now they can't. But yeah, what was your thought about Luka and the Lakers? Because you're a Lakers fan, right?
Yeah, by default. I mean, I don't really care that much, but
know.
they're an interesting team. It's a cool place to go. I love going to LA, and I did go watch LeBron because he's a generational. No matter what you really think of him, he was freaky to watch.
Agree.
Luka Doncic. I mean, I watched him play. I saw Dallas play the Lakers in Jan of 24, and
That's right.
he's, like you said, I asked you about him, and you're a harsh critic. You'll call it as you call a spade, and you said, like the way he moves his body, and like he's freaky talented and freaky good, and the energy he played with that night for the Mavericks versus the energy he's now playing with, and even when he first got to the Lakers, he's a little bit overweight, but like the energy he's now playing with, it's comparable to the energy he had when he first hit the shores of America and played in the NBA. Like that, I think Nico Young, whatever his name is, the Dallas organization. Nico Harrison. They inadvertently, I believe, gave him a chance at saving his career for being an all-time great basketball player. And because without that kick he was coasting into these multi-million-dollar deals, and he was a star, but he was going through the motions. He was overweight. He was petulant and disinterested. And then I think it gave him a kick in the ass to say, doesn't matter who you are, you know, if you don't effectively try and get on with the team and watch your weight and be focused, then we don't want you. So even though it's kind of destroyed their organization in the short term, I don't think they necessarily did the wrong thing. Everyone's going, oh, look, we should fire this guy and all that. Yeah. They probably had a lot of problems with him. He was probably being a little brat, and they probably thought, we've had enough. We don't want you in our organization. So I get it. To say, though, that the Lakers, to say, though, they shouldn't have done it because they could have done this, I don't believe that. I believe only by firing his ass, and then he'd had to look in the mirror and get angry and go, stuff this, I'm Luka Doncic, I'm going to be a big star. So I think the Lakers are now benefiting. Whoever picked him up was going to benefit from that absolute kick in the ass at a pivotal time in his life as a person, as a man.
Yeah. It's really interesting, the dynamic at play there. So I heard this theory the other day, just listening to something on YouTube or one of these like Instagram talk shows. But I thought it was kind of interesting to talk about how LeBron hasn't come back into the team yet and why he hasn't done so. And at the moment, the current injury designation is sciatica in his back, which is, for a guy at his age, it's completely understandable. But just some really interesting stuff. Like, he's not traveling with the team at the moment. You know, they were in, I believe, Minnesota the other night. LeBron was spotted at the Dodgers game, decided to go there instead of traveling with the team. And the theory was, I'll put this to you to get your first take on it, was that LeBron basically is almost silent protesting at the moment, right? Because as we know, he does have a bit of a history of wanting to self-promote himself and his importance. You know, there's been this ongoing battle, fear or not to him, of who's the greatest of all time. Is it LeBron? Is it Michael Jordan? You know, and that's been something he's had to deal with his whole career. And it's almost seemed like in the last sort of 5 or 6 years, it's become a bit of almost like a presidential election campaign from his side to prove that he is better for some reason. But when they made that trade, and they brought Doncic over to the Lakers. Apparently, LeBron wasn't really in the know of it or didn't sign off on it the way that he has been able to sign off on almost every other roster move for the Lakers over, the course of his time there, and also previously with Cleveland, Miami, et cetera, et cetera. So he's a bit pissed off about it. So the theory is that he doesn't want to come back to the team because he was hoping that the team would actually suck. And then that would mean that when he came back to the lineup, all of a sudden he would be the great savior of the Lakers season. Oh my gosh, thank God we got LeBron back. See, we needed him all along. But it's kind of backfired because, Austin Reeves has really stepped up to the plate, had a 50-point game in that game against Minnesota. Doncic has started the season with 3 40-point games, something that hasn't happened since Kobe, way back when. And it's kind of left LeBron in a bit of a lurch here because now people are like, well, maybe we don't actually need him on the squad because he's just an aging guy and he might not even be our second best player. What do you think about that theory?
I think possibly he suffers from the same circumstances that you said you suffered from, where we all thought because you kicked our ass as an athlete that you were never worried about anyone and you were just really cocksure. But I think he might be actually quite a insecure person who is a damn hard worker. And I went and watched him, and there's undeniably a halo around him, and some of the stuff he could still do. This is 2 years ago. He's quite old by then, 38, 39, like the dunks he was still doing, some of the defense he was doing. Off the ball, they really fear him. He does so many passes when they've got like 2 or 3 guys mob him. Some of the little fadeaways he's doing, the threes, he's got that halo. So whether he's the greatest or not, probably is the consensus. Jordan is greater, but who really gives a shit? That's just really for sort of sports bar fodder. Yeah, but he is an absolute great of all time. But I will say this, that if he wants to keep in the limelight and he wants to keep doing this, the only way he could have avoided this is to have retired. The fact he wants to stay in, someone was always going to come into his organization like this. They were never going to pass up the chance to take on Luka. Why would they ever do that? Because they're a business first and foremost. They're in the entertainment business. So that was always going to happen. I believe I love LeBron. I think he's awesome. I get some of the criticism and all that, but you just take the good with the bad. But I do think, even notwithstanding I love LeBron, I love watching him play, and I think he's a good person for what I can see. I think he absolutely is sulking, and he's a bit like, it's not like other times he's got the tracksuit on and he's right in there with them. Yeah. It's like this guy's come into kind of my team and he's sitting there in all his Louis Vuitton gear and he's got the arms crossed, and they're like, Luke will do another outrageous, like high arcing three, and he's kind of like
body
like
language.
I think he is, like, rightly or wrongly, I think he is a bit miffed about the whole thing. That's life though, eh? You've got to have to accept it, because life's going to move on without him. The Lakers is going to move on without him, whether he likes it or not.
Yeah. Yeah, the other big one here, I mentioned it as we're segueing into this innovative new segment where you and I are discussing US sports as non-Americans, was this kind of meltdown that's happened with the networks, and just got me wondering.
Oh yeah, tell me about that. I don't know about that. That's really interesting.
Yeah, so basically what's happened here in the US is, as athletes' salaries have just skyrocketed, it's crazy. Like, the rest of the country seems to have been suffering over the last sort of 5 years with inflation and, salaries and wages not matching level of inflation in the US. And somehow the one of the only industries that has managed to avoid that is pro sports, right? Where athlete salaries are just going up and up and up. And, the NBA just signed this historic $70+ billion deal with the TV networks just last year, which kind of didn't really make sense, because the viewership of the NBA was going down. It was losing popularity. Adam Silver, the commissioner of the NBA, was sort of hanging his hat on this sort of engagement model or theory, which was not really based around people watching the full games. It was based around people going onto YouTube or Instagram to watch highlight packages. Anyway, the networks fell for it, right? They pay all this money, and then the offshoot of that is that player salaries go up. But what's actually happened in the US is, in order to pay for like this money, right? This is the way it goes, right? Like, if NBC, ESPN, Amazon, they come to this combined deal of $70 billion that go to the NBA, right? they've got to make that money back somehow as well. And what's happened is, as the country has moved away from this cable TV model to the subscription model, what's actually happened is like the networks have been able to even splinter their services into all these like different sort of streaming platforms that you have to pay for to watch these games, right? So in the past, you used to be able to watch ESPN on like ABC or TNT, right? And now ABC, TNT, they're not in the game anymore, but NBC, Disney, all these companies have got these different streaming platforms, right, that have splintered off, and you need to pay the subscription for all of them. And so what's basically happened is that covertly under the average American's nose, like the price of watching sports has just skyrocketed in the last, 3 to 4 years. The NFL is really bad too. Now you've got to have like Amazon Prime, you've got to have Peacock, you've got to have they've even got games on Netflix, Christmas games on Netflix. So you want to watch the NFL, you got to have a Netflix subscription, all this kind of stuff. And then it was announced yesterday or 2 days ago that one of the big streaming providers, you've got like Hulu, you've got Peacock, you've got YouTube TV. YouTube TV's got like a big sports package, especially around the NFL, et cetera, and basically there's been like a dispute between YouTube TV and ABC/Disney, and they've pulled their channels out of the YouTube TV subscription. So all these people that have got this streaming service to watch sports have been left in the lurch, because now all of a sudden college football, all the ESPN, who were one of the contributors to this big NBA deal, like you don't have NBA on them anymore, and it's caused this like meltdown. I'm just really sitting here wondering if we're coming to this inflection point with pro sports where people are just getting, again, like absolutely fucked in terms of like how much money they need to spend just to watch it. And surely there's got to be a point where the average American household that isn't getting any richer is just like, we just can't afford to do this anymore, right?
Yeah.
And then does the whole pro sport model eventually break down? I don't know.
Whenever
Sorry, that was a long
no, it's
diatribe.
interesting. I enjoyed it. It's great. Whenever there is a prevailing narrative in the media about an ism, whether it's capitalism, socialism, fascism, you've got to look at I don't want to say the counterfactual, but the factual situation about what is, say, going on in a macroeconomic sense. So when I was in New York and we went to that Giants game, we were blown away by the amount of people at a regular Giants game, and the amount of people in the merchandise store was mind-bending. This thing was like the size of a bloody full stadium in New Zealand. It was crazy, and the lines to buy this expensive, overpriced merch. We were buying it because it was like a bucket list thing for us to be at an NFL game on the other side of the world. But you think about the prevailing narrative of socialism in the world at the moment, or the left being very loud, and you think of that as a counterpunch or a defensive shield to capitalism, which is running rampant under Trump in the States at the moment. And it's this whole increasing suffocation of the middle classes. Right. And under the guise of sport, which is, escapism,
totally,
the price to participate in something to escape from the very thing that you suffocating you. So there's quite an irony at play there.
Yes. Yeah. No, 100%. Yeah.
So I think you'll be dead right.
It's crazy. I mean, it just at some point, it just has to be. You cannot. You're right. It's like the ultimate Stockholm syndrome sort of situation. We watch pro sports. You even look at the timing of pro sports. The most popular professional sport to watch in America is the NFL. When does the NFL start? Starts right at the end of summer, just as the weather's getting shitty and, people want to stay indoors. And then you've got this advent of sports gambling, which, I mean, we're kind of running out of time. But, man, that was a huge thing in America also last week as well that was tied into it, this whole NBA betting scandals. What I
don't get with us human beings is how people can in any way, shape or form struggle to wrap their head around the fact that these guys do this or have done this. I mean, it's been massive in cricket, a sport that's closer to our hearts than US viewers, but like, of course there'll be, like the things like that would have gone on. Yeah. And it's not even about, I was thinking what we were talking about with Chancey Billups, like, it's not even because you sort of how much money he's already gotten from his career, and it's not about that. It's us humans when we're making. It's like you go down to the races if you're on a you're making good money in your business, and I had a 71-1 outsider come home in the Melbourne Cup. I put $100 on it, and it nosed out my mate's horse. He would have won like 20 odd K or something, and I actually had money on that horse too because he'd given me the tip, and it's just a throwaway thing. I said, and I actually would have won like 12 or 13K if this thing hadn't come home, and he would have won 20. But in my head, I'm like, I'd rather win 7 and he won none because we're best mates, and it's funny to like give each other. And that money is like not a lot of money in terms of say if I had to work for it in my job, but it's like a thrill because it was a silly horse race that's on down under like once a year. So it's the same thing for a guy like him. It's like he knows he's getting this salary. He knows he's got this great life. Presumably he does. I don't know anything about the guy. And it's like, we're going to the dungeon and we're going to gamble. And imagine if people knew it's the same reason people who are from affluent backgrounds become drug runners because they got sick of working for John and Marjorie down in the accounting department somewhere. And they thought, run some drugs because they saw a Netflix show about it. Right. Humans, we want stimulus, and sometimes that will lead us into dark and desperate and troublesome places. And it doesn't matter how much money you've got; the urge is there.
Yeah, it's like the qualifiable always trumps the quantifiable, because quantifiably you look at it in an objective sense and say there's absolutely no need to be. No. What do you need, like $8,000 from the mafia to stitch up a bunch of rich guys in a poker game? You don't need that when you've made $130 million. Like you're making more you're making more than $8,000 in interest or in stock dividends like every day than you're getting from these guys. But yet we still do it. Such an interesting thing. But yeah, I think we should make this a part of the podcast even more, Shane. Like as we expand our horizons, just we stick to our core competency, which is talking track and field. But as we get into these darker days, we've got opinions on other things that maybe the people want to hear. So we should stick with it. What do you reckon?
Well, it's really just for our own indulgence, this whole thing anyway. So, we can talk about topics we're highly competent and knowledgeable about poorly. So we might as well do the same thing about stuff we don't really know anything about as well.
That's
just round it out.
Yeah. All right, mate. Should we wrap it up?
Yeah.
Awesome. That was a good one.
Auckland half and Marathin are on today. I'm not quite high enough in the old Shorten Street Tower, but if we were maybe 5 levels, no, I'm dreaming, 10 levels higher.
Yeah.
You could see that all the people on the Harbour Bridge right now.
Oh, really?
I mean, not quite yet. What time is it? What time does the full start? No, they would be. Yeah.
No, they would be 100%. Yeah. They must start about 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock in the morning at latest, right? Yep. Oh, I mean, that makes sense. You've got the New York City Marathon on tomorrow. You've got to have another one of the world's great marathons on the same weekend. Why not? Is it still the BMW Auckland Marathon?
I don't believe it is, but I really should know.
Yeah, it's probably sponsored by Bartercard now or something like that.
Yeah. Or Para Plastic Rubber.
Para Rubber pools. Para Rubber overground pools and filters. All right, cool. Well, good one, Shane. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. I don't know what I'm going to do. It's pouring down with rain. Thought I might try and get up into Forest Park, where I know you've been and enjoyed, and your time in Portland.
Maybe you'll see Yared and the Goose up there again.
Oh, I could see them. You never know. You never know who you're going to see in Forest Park in Portland. That's the great thing. There's plenty of great runners around the city. Every now and then you'll see someone up there jogging. They don't know who I am, obviously. So that's all good. I'm not one of them anymore. I never was. But yeah, we'll see if I can get up there and slop around in the mud on Wildwood Trail. Who knows?
Very good, mate. Another one in the books.
Another one in the books, keeping things rolling here on the People Podcast, the home of the most insightful track and field review and knowledge on the internet. You've got
Nah, I got nothing else.
All right, mate. Enjoy the rest of the weekend, and we will see you again in a week's time on the track stitch. See you, mate.
Thanks, mate.